of Bridgecast. I'm here with Chris Nkemba Ndjungu and Alex Hercules. Chris Nkemba Ndjungu is going to be our guest for today. He is serving on our board of directors currently, and he has a lot of interaction with the international community. So our focus for this episode of Bridgecast will be how we interact with the larger international community. As of right now, Bridge Builders STL does not operate exchange programs that are international. We only have one exchange program that goes to Dupree, South Dakota on the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe Reservation. But our hope is that as we grow as an organization that we will start to have exchange programs that are international. And so Nkemba, being with the board of directors since the founding of the organization, it is very important that we continue to practice responsible ethics and responsible practices as a nonprofit organization on an international perspective. I'm also joined by Alex Hercules, who's our community engagement director. Alex, the community engagement specialist, this was his idea to start Bridgecast. So we really see it as being important that him be here and help facilitate the conversation. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure to make a call out to the larger community that many of you know that our largest fundraising opportunity of the year, the Run for Dupree, had to be canceled due to COVID-19. As a result, our hope is that we will still be able to have the larger exchange program at the end of June with everything as far as the quarantine is permitting. So that being said, we will still need to raise funds to send our exchange team to Dupree and have our Dupree team come to St. Louis. Again, we are asking as an organization to our community and how important it is that our community help uplift the organization and make this exchange program possible. As many of you know, our exchange team members are not required to pay very much to go on the exchange program. For our St. Louis team members, it is only $125 for them to participate in the 2-week program, and that covers their food, housing, and travel. For our Dupree exchange team members, we try our best to make it completely free for the team members there. This requires that we do quite a bit of fundraising, and right now with all of us practicing social distancing, that makes our job a little bit more difficult. So we're doing Bridgecast as another example to stay connected with our community. And one of the things that I want to make sure to push out to you guys is to please go online and donate. Our website is www.bridgebuildersstl.org. Right at the top, you can see the donation button. So please click the donation button and provide and help support the exchange team going to on the St. Louis Dupree Exchange program at the end of June. We're going to go ahead and get started with our interview, and Alex is going to have our first question for Nkemba.
All right, let's get the show on the road. All right, so Nkemba, could you tell us a little bit about your background and also your perspective on international relations and immersion?
Yeah, so my background is a little convoluted, but we're going to see if we can break it down a little bit and make it simple. So usually when people ask me where you're from, my response is usually I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo by way of Senegal, but I'm a resident of the United States, right? So like I said, a little convoluted, but I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo. For those who are not familiar with the country that's in Africa, Central Africa to be exact. Not to be confused with the Republic of Congo. There are two. One is called the Republic of Congo, that's a smaller one, also known as Congo Brazzaville. And then I'm from the Democratic Republic of Congo, that's the bigger one, also known as Congo Kinshasa. It was formerly called Zaire under President Mobutu. That's where I was born, lived there until I was about 11 years old. And then my parents, who are United Methodist missionaries, became missionaries and were assigned to Senegal when I was 11. And so we moved to Senegal. So I grew up in Senegal. And then after Senegal, when I graduated high school, then I came to the U.S. for college and have been living here off and on. So I'm what some sociologists have termed a third culture kid, because you're born in one culture, you grow up in a different culture, so you end up mixing the two, you kind of create your own culture. But in the meantime, I've always loved traveling. Traveling is, I believe, one of the best teachers out there. So I've been to 4 out of the 5 major inhabited continents anyways. The only one I haven't been to is Oceania. I think most people here may know it as Australia, although Australia is just one country. but I've been to all the other continents. And it's fascinating to see who I've become as opposed to who I was as a child based on the experiences that I've had in various places. So that's a little bit of background of who I am. As far as international relations and how I see them playing out, right, in my travels, I mean, that's influenced a lot of how I see the world, how I perceive the world. And it's also allowed me to see things that maybe people may be oblivious to just because they're used to seeing things from one particular perspective. But I can sit in the U.S., for instance, and decide I'm not going to look at it with an American eye. Let me try to turn off that eye and look at it with a European eye, for example, or an African eye, for instance. You'll hear me refer to African a lot just because I believe that as a people we are more alike than we are divided. So I don't ascribe to the geographical divisions that break us into different countries so much. So I always refer to myself as African first and then Congolese second. So that's why I talk about myself as African. But yeah, so you see how that plays out, and you realize that when you look at something from a different perspective, whereas you may think in one context that it's a good thing, it may turn out to be a bad thing in another context. So where you think it's a bad thing in another context, like, no, that's precisely what we need. So all these understand what's going on. And my training in theology has been helpful, because if you train in theology, then you do public work. You do a little bit of training in social work. You do a little bit of training in philosophy. You do a little bit of training in ethics and counseling. So there are so many disciplines that you're exposed to that are so useful. But again, like I said, traveling, it just teaches you things that you could not learn in a course on politics or international relations or public relations or anything like that. Just take, if you have a chance, travel as much as you can and learn as much as you can. That's a little bit of my background. Like I said, a little convoluted, but I did my best to try to synchronize it and
did a great job.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that is very important of making your acquaintance, and you've been a mentor of mine for almost 7 years now, Nkemba, I think interacting with the international community is something the United States and other Western countries have struggled with, particularly with nonprofit organizations and churches and other sort of groups that travel abroad. To you, what is one of the largest pitfalls that we see with any sort of community work happening on an international scale?
Well, there are a number of them, right? And I'm glad you said what is one, because then I would have just gone off on a rant that wouldn't end. But so let me try to pick one. So I have one of my experiences was that I was a volunteer with a non-government organization, also known as an NGO, in Goma in Eastern DRC, Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. This was basically immediately after. I don't even know if we can really say after. I want to say after the Second Congo War. But that war hasn't really ended, right? Because there are still some proxy wars that are being fought in that territory. But anyway, when the major fighting ended, there were a lot of people who were displaced from their villages, from their communities. And so you have all this group of people that is known in volunteer fields in the humanitarian world as IDPs, right? Internally displaced peoples. So then you had an influx of NGOs and nonprofits flood to Goma in the DRC. It got to a point where I don't know if that has changed, but between the UN and all these organizations that were there, Goma was known as the world capital of NGOs. That's how many were there operating. But one thing that I noticed, it never failed. And it never fails even when you look at mission groups from churches. Every group that comes in, every organization that comes in, there's always this mentality of, these people are lost without us. There's nothing they can do for themselves. We need to go in and save them, right? And this is what, for most of you have heard it termed the white savior mentality. Yeah. So there's black people in Africa, there's brown people in Latin America, there's brown people in Asia, all these people in the global south cannot do anything for themselves. We need to go in and save them. And so added to that is this sense that whatever mission trip is going, whatever organization is going, this is somebody's initiative, or this is a group of people's initiative. And one of the things that I've seen in the field is you have, when it comes to mission groups, you have especially non-profit organizations like NGOs. They get a lot of funding from organizations such as USAID or UNDP, which is United Nations Fund for Development, right? What ends up happening is that about 70% of the funding that is given to these organizations goes towards what is known as administrative expenses. Only 30% is programmatic, meaning only 30% of the money is used to actually run the programs and bring help to the people who are in need. The 70% is used for offices, vehicles, housing for the people, for these expats, these expatriates who are going into these countries, their salary. I ran into people who are coming in with non-government organizations, with non-profits, who are coming to help people. And they have a salary of $25,000 a month in an area where the cost of living is maybe $400 or $500 a month. So their salary is $25,000 a month. The schooling for their children is paid for. They have 2 vehicles at their disposal. Each vehicle has its own driver. They have help at the house, which, by the way, is paid for by the organization. They have some money that is set aside for them for food, for gas. Everything is paid for. To which, and then I ask the question: so why are you even paid that much? Like, you shouldn't be paid that much, period. But if you're going to be paid that much, why should they then pay for everything else, right? So that has been the biggest thing that I've noticed, that a lot of people that go into nonprofits that say they're going in to help, in reality, they're not actually helping. It's just another business. It's just another way of making money. And you see it with churches. With churches, it's not so much that they're looking to make money, but they're looking to get that sense of accomplishment. We went in and helped these poor people. We went in and saved them and gave them something that they couldn't do for themselves. You hear it all the time. You heard this. There's a story that comes out of Latin America, Central America. I can't remember the country specifically, but there was a group of, I don't want to call them missionaries, but a group that went on a mission trip, and they decided they were going to build a school for the community. It was a school or a hospital, I can't remember. But it just so happens that there's a specific technique that is used to build if you want that building to be sustainable and last long in that particular part of the country. Nobody from here was trained to do that, but they go in because they had decided we're going to go and build this for them. They would go in, and every morning, they get to work and start building. And so the locals would sneak out of their homes at night and correct whatever the mission team was doing. Like, they would fix whatever they were doing, because this is not how you do it. Like, this thing won't last. Until it got to, it took them to where the walls were almost completely up for the leader to realize this is not what we were doing. This looks different. Before they called in the locals, and then they explained it to them, they're like, oh, we didn't know. Here, you take over and do it. Like, just little things like that people don't pay attention to. So that's one of the areas where cultural sensitivity and the humility to ask the people that you think don't have anything to offer can make a huge difference as to whether or not you're actually helping.
Man, you kind of touched on this next question a little bit in your answer right there. But so what are your views on how the international community should be interacting with one another?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I began to touch on that. The humility, really, right? So the way humility shows itself is that, the way I like to talk about it is an understanding that comes to me being a pastor. I draw a lot from the Bible, so it's an understanding that comes from the Bible that says, "Be quick to listen, but slow to speak." Right. So the way to go about cooperating, the way to go about really understanding one another and working together, is to be humble enough to say, I don't know everything. I may have gone to the best schools. I may have gone to the best Ivy League schools. but at the end of the day, I don't know anything. That if I am humble enough, I can learn from the smallest of children. I can learn from the least educated person out there. So really it comes down to humility and the willingness to learn. Because again, like I said, traveling and encountering people will teach you way more than you will ever learn sitting in a classroom or reading a book. It's a completely different type of teacher. So humility for me is a big thing, and the willingness to learn, to listen and learn from others is really how we can learn from it. It's how we can grow and better exchange with one another.
And I think, thank you for sharing so far, Nkemba. I think one of the issues that you touched on very specifically with how we act with humility also hits on some theories that we've been working on the idea of place-based learning. And I saw that Dr. Kleiman is watching right now, and he's at the forefront of a lot of this theories of what it means to be a placemaker within our larger community. Interacting with Bridge Builders STL, and like I said earlier in the video, you are one of the founding members of Bridge Builders STL. What draws you to Bridge Builders STL and the work that is done through the exchange programs? How do we implement this idea of place-based learning and humility on interacting in an international community?
You know, with just the philosophy behind the Bridge Builders, I think is what we need in the world, and that's what I think that's what I've kind of been getting at, and the reason why I'm here talking about this is, like you said, I was there at the beginning, and so I knew what direction we were trying to push this. When you're talking about Bridge Builders and you make it known to people that no, we're not actually builders of bridges, like actual bridges.
Yeah.
And then you begin to unwrap that, right? And you talk about the fact that we're building bridges between people. That's exactly what this work is, right? It's building bridges between different communities, building bridges between different cultures. And a lot of that is the humility to say, we as a human race are not where we need to be. We as a human race still operate under this model of it's okay for some to die and fail as long as the majority do well, right? If you look at even the economic model that permeates the world, that dominates our world, which is capitalism. For capitalism, ask any economist, right? I'm also an economist by training. My bachelor's degree is in economics. For capitalism to work, it requires that 1/3 of the population, or whatever population that particular model is being applied to, it requires that 1/3 of that population be bankrupt at all times. Like, that's a requirement of how capitalism works. So you take things like that into account, and you see that you have capitalism is when it's coupled with neocolonialism, it's coupled with imperialism, like all these different ideologies. It makes it difficult, if not impossible, for different groups to be able to come together at a table and have a discussion as to how we can better our human race and better the world, right? Part of that is because we see people from a specific geographic location as people that we can collaborate with or people that we need to impose a given will to. So what I saw in Bridge Builders as a potential was a potential to lay aside those ideologies and those prejudices where we say, for instance, let's take the St. Louis Dupree Exchange Program. If the mentality was, those of us from St. Louis are civilized, or we are advanced, or we are educated, so we're going to go into Dupree and help them and save them, I never would have gotten behind any such program. In fact, I would have spoken against it as being one of the board members, right? But because we understood that we can't just have that mentality that we're going to save them, we realized that it was important not just to go to Dupree, but it was important to bring Dupree to St. Louis. That doesn't mean that we become irrational and pretend as if disparities don't exist. They exist, right? The West is richer than the global south, but that's a topic for another day. I'm not going to go into it as to how that came about being. The same reason that I'm not going to go into the details about how the rest of the U.S. became to be richer than reservation land and people that live there, right? But it is what it is. That's the case. We have more resources than they do. So it's absolutely our responsibility to foot the bill where we can, to make sure that we are beginning this process of trying to bring an end to that. So acknowledging where people are, acknowledging their circumstances and what is real and what drives them will then allow us to acknowledge who we are, where we stand, and what we consider real and what drives us. And then when we come to the table in that type of honesty, then we have a place to begin. We still haven't solved anything, but at least we have a place to begin. And that's a place of honesty, hospitality, and humility, the 3 H's. So that's why Bridge Builders, because that's my hope, is that is the type of organization that we're going to be, that we're going to help bring about that kind of communal living, that kind of community exchange, to where really we won't be thinking of each other as separate communities, but that we'll be able to interweave within one another.
Very well spoken. Very well spoken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was on the money. But, so I guess to kind of keep it going, what does an organization like us need to take into consideration when working with international communities, would you think?
Say that again.
What does an organization like Bridge Builders or another nonprofit organization have to take into consideration when working with the international community?
When working with an international community, the biggest thing really is cultural sensitivity. There are a lot of people that want to do cross-cultural work or intercultural work when you find yourself maybe in the same place and you're trying to mingle with people of different cultures. Mm-hmm. That's good, but usually most people are trying to do it in a way that they understand culture to be working. The really terrible ones are just trying to impose their culture on other people. You know, they come and they find a different culture behaving in a certain way, and they say, oh no, these people are not civilized, we need to civilize them, right? We saw that with colonialism, we saw that with all sorts of different evils in the past. But even in today's world, you see people who are just, I call them culturally incompetent, right? Because they come in and they want to live the exact same way that they've always lived, wherever it was. So let me give you a very simple example. When you go to the DRC, let me use Senegal this time because I've used DRC a lot. Senegal is known as the land of Teranga. Teranga is Wolof for hospitality. Here in the U.S., I don't know, for some reason, it's instilled in us as children, even as children, right? Stranger danger, avoid strangers. And so when people grow up, that communal living where people are just outside, sitting out on their porch, whatever, and their kids like run around in the street playing with one another, that doesn't really exist here. It's different in Senegal. Like, that's the very fabric of community. Part of that is that you are expected to be friendly with all your neighbors. I've seen people that move from here that were working at the embassy or missionaries or whatever the case may be with different organizations. They come in and they want to continue living the same way they've been living here, which is you go to work, you come home, you stay in your home, you mind your own business. That doesn't work in Senegal, because the day you need help, you can cry for help all you want. Nobody's going to come to your aid. And when you complain and say, I was in need, how come nobody helped me? They're going to ask you one question. Every time that you drive by here, do you not see people? How come you don't say hello? Right? Hello opens doors in Senegal. Like, when you see people, it is an unspoken rule. It is mandatory. You must say hello. Even if you're not going to stick around to do anything, you must say hello, right? And so one of those cultural things that we need to learn in the West is that when you go into another culture, humility again, you need to sit with the people, find out what is culturally acceptable for them, not what is culturally acceptable for you. Now, if part of what is culturally acceptable for them is taboo for you, you can then begin to engage in a conversation. But if you don't engage in the conversation, one, you are disrespecting that culture. Two, you may end up doing something that is culturally acceptable for you, but that is culturally taboo for them, right? So taking the time to learn the other culture, having the humility to say, I can learn something from them. And just really, in short, avoiding having that mentality of us, them. Right? When you go in, if you decide to go in, you are not separating yourself. You are going fully in. Participate in everything, fully jump in and engage in it all. You can't have this mentality, it's them, they're doing their own thing, I'm going to do my own thing. It won't work. It will never work. People will know. People will notice it, and they will know that you're not serious and that you're not really invested.
That was our last question for the day, Nkemba, and I really appreciate you coming in. Your words are very well spoken. You have a vast knowledge over the things, and I think we're so lucky to have you as a board member for Bridge Builders STL. Is there anything further you want to add?
No, just that I'm very glad that you guys decided to start this Bridgecast. This is a brilliant idea. I think it's going to help a lot of people. It's going to help educate a lot of us about different topics that you're going to be bringing up, and that I'm extremely proud of what Bridge Builders is doing. Again, that's why I decided to get on board from the very beginning, because there is need for organizations like this, and there's a need for all of us to keep each other accountable down the road, because we're all going to have blind spots when it comes to certain things. It's just the reality of how life is. It doesn't matter how well traveled you are, how many different cultures you've been exposed to. Those different cultures will shape you in a way that you're going to have your own very unique and specific bias. And people who don't have that bias are going to be able to help you navigate in different situations in ways that you may not be able to. So just to encourage bridge builders to continue to reach out and work with people of different backgrounds, different social statuses, different education levels, different communities, different cultures, all that kind of stuff. This is what we need in this world. It was a dream of Dr. King. It was the dream of Gandhi. It was the dream of Patrice Lumumba in the DRC. It has been the dream of so many. And it was a dream that was preached out loud by Jesus, right? For us Christians, this is something that we look to Jesus, and this is what he was trying to teach us, that we are all one race, the human race. That doesn't mean that we pretend, oh, I don't see race, that's just irresponsible. That's not what we're talking about. Like, we have different pigmentations. There's no getting around that. But getting beyond that is what we're getting at. Is what we're saying, that we need to see everybody as one race, the human race. So I have a lot of hope for bridge builders. Hopefully we'll inspire some other organizations to take up this kind of work and do the same thing.
Thank you very much for your time, Nkemba. And hopefully when we're able to meet all again, we can meet in person and have another Bridgecast episode with people at the table.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Excellent work with the Bridgecast. I hope everything will go really well and that it will continue to grow and it will be informative and transformative for many people.
Thank you. And thank you again to Alex Hercules, our community engagement specialist, who came up with this wonderful idea and is able to join us as well. Again, thank you guys.
Indeed. Kudos.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.